Arizona Territory, 1878. Aiyana stumbled through the burning sand, blood running warm down her side as Burke Lancaster's riders closed in behind her, like wolves scenting the kill. Every breath tore at her ribs. Every step sank her deeper into the desert that wanted her dead as much as the men chasing her. She fell hard, fingers clawing uselessly at the ground, knowing no one was coming, knowing her people were gone and she was the last flicker left to snuff out. Is this where my story ends? Alone? Before we continue, if you're watching this from anywhere in the world, leave your city name in the comments. I want to see how far this story travels. Aiyana didn't remember falling. One moment she was running, bare feet tearing against the blistered ground, breath burning in her throat, and the next, the desert rose up and swallowed her. The sand scraped her cheek as she hit the earth, the taste of blood warm on her tongue. She tried to push herself up again. Her arms trembled. Her vision blurred. Everything smelled of smoke, the same smoke that had swallowed her village only hours earlier. She could still hear the screams if she let her mind slip for even a heartbeat. Her father's shout, her mother's last cry, the horses, the gunfire, and over it all, Burke Lancaster's cold, satisfied laugh. "No, keep moving," she whispered, though her voice barely carried beyond her lips. But her legs refused her. Her right side throbbed where the bullet had grazed her ribs, shallow but bleeding too much. Each breath stabbed like a knife between her bones. She dragged herself forward, fingers clawing uselessly at the hot cement. Behind her, carried by the wind, came the distant thunder of hooves. The sound froze her blood. They were still following. Aiyana shut her eyes for half a second. Just half a second. Long enough to gather what little strength she had left. Long enough to remember her mother pushing her toward the trees, whispering fiercely, "Run, little hawk. Fly." She wasn't flying now. She barely scraped another inch across the ground. The hooves grew louder. Then the voices, rough, drunk on victory. "There, tracks lead north. Boss said she ain't allowed to live." Aiyana's heart pounded so hard she thought it would burst through her chest. She tried to roll onto her side, tried to reach for the small knife still tucked at her waist. Not that it would help, not against Burke's riders. Still, she'd rather die fighting than let them take her alive. But her hand slipped, sand filling her palm instead of the weapon. Her strength was done. She felt the world wobble and darken as heat waves rippled around her. Her breath came shallow, ragged. Her body curled tight instinctively, as if trying to shield itself from what she knew was coming. Is this it? Is this where my story ends, alone? The sky above her flickered. The sun burned white. The hooves thundered so close now she felt the vibration in the ground, beneath her cheek. Then, just as she forced her eyes open one more time, a new sound cut through the chaos. A single sharp whistle, a horse skidding hard. A voice, deep, steady, nothing like the men hunting her. "Hey, easy, I got you." A shadow dropped over her, blocking the sun. For one dizzy second she thought perhaps the spirits had come to carry her home. But the figure leaned closer, and she saw a broad chest, a weathered coat, and eyes dark as storm clouds looking down at her with something she had not seen for days. Concern. The man knelt beside her. She felt his hand hover over her shoulder before he dared touch her, as if afraid she might crumble beneath his fingers. "Stay with me," he murmured. "Come on, girl. Don't you close those eyes on me." She tried to speak, but all that escaped was a broken gasp. The man, Elijah Carter, though she didn't know his name yet, didn't wait for explanations, didn't ask who she was or why she lay bleeding in the middle of the desert. He just slid his arms beneath her, lifting her effortlessly against his chest. Her head lolled against him. His heartbeat thumped steady beneath her ear, strong and impossibly calm compared to her own racing panic. Behind them, one of Burke's men shouted, "There! That rider! He's got her!" Elijah's jaw tightened. She felt it as much as she saw it. "Well, hell," he muttered under his breath. "Guess we're doing this the hard way." He swung into the saddle with her in his arms. Dust Devil, his stallion, pawed the ground, sensing the danger. The riders crested the hill behind them, guns glinting beneath the sun. Elijah didn't hesitate. "Hold on to me," he said, though she barely had the strength to lift a hand. "I ain't leaving you out here. Not today." He kicked Dust Devil hard, and the world lurched as the horse exploded into motion. Wind tore at her hair. Pain shot through her ribs. Her vision flickered. But for the first time since her family fell, Aiyana felt something like a thread pulling her back from the edge. Safety. Warmth. A voice choosing her life over his own. She tried to whisper a warning, tried to say Burke's name, but the words melted into the wind. Still, her fingers found his coat, gripping it weakly as the desert blurred around them. And Elijah Carter, stranger, cowboy, protector she never asked for, held her closer and rode like the devil himself was on their trail. He wasn't wrong. Elijah Carter had outrun bandits before, soldiers too, but tonight felt different. Tonight, he wasn't running to save himself. He was running with a half-conscious girl bleeding in his arms, her breath faint against his collarbone. Her fingers curled weakly into his coat like she was clinging to life itself. And hell if he wasn't clinging right back. Behind them, Burke Lancaster's men burst over the ridge, dust flying, guns drawn, shouting like wolves who smelled blood. "There he is! That's the one with the Apache girl!" Elijah didn't flinch. He leaned low over Dust Devil's neck and muttered, "Faster, boy. We ain't dying today." The stallion stretched into a dead sprint, hooves pounding the earth so hard Aiyana felt the tremors through Elijah's body. The wind tore at her braids. Her ribs burned with every breath. She tried to speak, to warn him who was behind them, but her voice came out as nothing more than a dry rasp. Elijah heard it anyway. "You hang on, sweetheart," he whispered, tightening his arm beneath her knees. "I got you. I ain't leaving you for them buzzards." One shot rang out, whistling past Elijah's shoulder. He jerked the reins, cutting sharply between two rocky outcrops. The riders behind them cursed, scrambling to keep up. Aiyana blinked through the blur, her head lolling against his chest. For a moment, she lifted her gaze enough to see his face. Sweat, dust, grit, jaw clenched like he'd rather die than drop her. Eyes blazing not with fear, but fury. Protective, consuming fury. Something in her chest loosened at that. Something fragile she'd thought had died back on the burning cliffs of her village. Trust. Another bullet hit the rocks beside them, spraying sharp shards into Elijah's sleeve. He winced, but didn't slow down. "Hear that?" he muttered, breath rough. "They're getting desperate. That's good. Desperate men make stupid choices." Dust Devil leapt a fallen log. Aiyana groaned softly, pain shooting up her side. Elijah tightened his grip. I know, he soothed, voice low. "I'm sorry. Just a little longer, I promise." The riders behind them fanned out, trying to flank. "Cut him off!" someone yelled. Elijah's eyes narrowed. Ahead lay a narrow split in the cliffs, almost invisible unless you'd ridden these lands for years. Lucky for them, he had. He pulled hard on the reins. Dust Devil pivoted sharply, skidding into the narrow pass just as the riders barreled past the opening. Elijah grinned despite the sweat dripping down his neck. "Ain't so smart now, are ya?" But the victory was short-lived. Aiyana suddenly jerked awake, gasping sharply. Her hand shot out and grabbed Elijah's shirt. "He killed them," she whispered hoarsely. "Burke killed my family." Elijah's breath froze. For the first time, he really looked at her, past the pain, past the blood, and straight into the truth she'd been running from. "I know his kind," Elijah said softly, voice edged with anger that wasn't meant for her. "Men who burn and take and think the world owes 'em something. He ain't touching you again." Her eyes filled, not with tears. Apache girls didn't cry in front of strangers, but with something even sharper. Fear and shame for still being alive. She sagged against him, whispering, "Why are you helping me?" Elijah didn't hesitate. "Because somebody should have helped you sooner." Dust Devil burst out of the narrow pass and into a wider stretch of land. The night air bit cold across their skin. Behind them, shouts echoed. The riders had found the trail again. Elijah looked down at her, jaw tight. "You listen to me," he said, voice rough but steady. "I don't care who chases us. I don't care if the whole damn territory wants your head. I'm not leaving you out here to die." Aiyana swallowed, her throat raw. "But you don't know me." "I know enough," Elijah answered. "You're hurt, you're hunted, and somebody has to stand between you and those devils." A gunshot cracked, closer this time. Elijah cursed and leaned forward, urging Dust Devil toward the shadowy outline of a distant canyon. "Hold on," he told her, his voice dropping low. "We're almost out of sight. After that, I'll get you somewhere safe. Somewhere nobody'll dare follow." Aiyana's eyes fluttered shut again, but not from weakness alone. For the first time since the massacre, she felt her heart loosen its grip on terror. Maybe, just maybe, she wasn't alone. And Elijah Carter, stubborn, fierce, reckless Elijah, rode as if he'd already decided. Her life was worth more than his own. By the time Elijah reached the old homestead tucked beside a scatter of scrub pines, Aiyana was drifting in and out of consciousness. Her breath hitched every few moments, and once her hand slid from his coat. He caught it quickly and pressed it back to her chest. "Hey, stay here. You hear me? We're almost safe." Safe. It wasn't a word she'd heard in a long time. Dust Devil trotted the final stretch, nostrils flaring at the scent of smoke from the chimney. A lantern glowed through a warped window. Elijah exhaled a breath half relief, half prayer. "She's home," he murmured. "Thank God." He swung off the saddle, cradling Aiyana against him as he approached the crooked porch. Before he could knock, the door creaked open. A tall, thin woman with gray braids and sharper eyes than any sheriff stepped into the frame, holding a shotgun like it was part of her arm. "Elijah Carter," she said, voice gravelly and unimpressed. "You better have a good damn reason for showing up at this hour." Elijah nodded toward Aiyana in his arms. "Got a wounded girl. Need help." Mrs. Mary's eyes softened the tiniest bit. "Bring her in. And wipe your boots. Ain't raising animals in here." The moment he stepped inside, warmth washed over Aiyana's cold skin. The room smelled of herbs, wood smoke, and old stories. Elijah knelt near the hearth and eased her down onto a faded blanket. When Aiyana's eyes flickered open and found a stranger bending over her, panic burst through her chest. She scrambled backward with a gasp, falling against the wall, breath ragged. Elijah raised both hands. "Easy, easy. No one's hurting you." Aiyana's voice cracked. Why am I here? What do you want?" Mrs. Mary snorted. "Girl, the boy carried you 10 miles bleeding like a stuck pig. You think he's keeping you alive just to cash you in?" She shot Elijah a look. "You tell her or I will." Elijah spoke gently. "I'm not selling you. I'm not giving you to any man. I saw you dying out there, and I ain't the type to leave somebody for dead." Aiyana's shoulders trembled. Suspicion warred with exhaustion in her eyes. Mrs. Mary crouched beside her. "You want to live? Let me fix you up. You want to die proud? Fine, but you're doing it outside. I just cleaned this floor." Despite the rough words, Mary placed a soft hand on Aiyana's jaw, turning her face to the light. "Lord have mercy," she muttered. "Burke Lancaster did this?" Aiyana's breath hitched. "He killed my parents." Mary's expression darkened, deep lines etching deeper. "Then you're staying. No girl from his trail dies under my roof." She moved fast, gathering jars, herbs, a bowl of clean water. Elijah stayed by Aiyana's side, steady as a rooted oak. Mary tore open the bloody cloth at Aiyana's ribs. The wound was swollen, angry. Elijah swallowed hard. "How bad?" "Bad enough," Mary said. "Bullet ain't in her, but she's lost too much blood." Aiyana clenched her teeth as Mary pressed a steaming cloth to her side. Elijah grasped her hand, and though she flinched, she didn't pull away. "You're all right," he whispered. "Look at me, focus on me." Unexpected warmth spread through her chest at his voice. Something safe, something grounding. "Why help me?" she whispered. Elijah hesitated only a breath. Because somebody's got to stand up to men like Burke. And today, I guess that somebody was me. Miri smirked. Boy, finally growing a spine. Elijah shot her a look. It was already there, ma'am. Not from what I remember. Aiyana almost smiled. Almost. But then a distant sound shattered the fragile calm. Horse hooves. Not one. Many. Elijah's head snapped up. Miri froze. Tell me that ain't... Elijah strode to the window, lifting a corner of the curtain, his jaw set. Burke's men. They're asking around the town. Someone'll lead 'em here. Aiyana's breath stuttered. They found us? Not yet, Elijah said. But they will. Miri grabbed his arm. You got 1 hour, maybe less. If they see your tracks, they'll assume you're hiding something. Aiyana tried to sit up. Go. Leave me. They want me, not you. Elijah kneeled in front of her, gripping her shoulders with surprising gentleness. I'm not leaving you, he said, voice raw. I didn't pull you from death just to hand you back. Aiyana shook her head weakly. You don't even know me. I don't have to. Outside, the hooves grew louder. Miri grabbed a cloth bag and pressed it into Elijah's hands. Bandages, herbs, dried meat. You're riding tonight. Aiyana's pulse hammered. Elijah, they'll kill you. He gave her a faint, crooked smile, the kind that made something warm settle inside her despite the fear. Maybe, he said, but they damn sure ain't taking you. And for the first time since her village burned, Aiyana believed someone might actually mean those words. Burke Lancaster rode into the dusty saloon like he owned the whole damn territory. Men fell silent as he pushed the door wide, boots thudding heavy across the warped floorboards. His eyes, pale, icy, pitiless, swept the room with the confidence of someone who'd never heard the word no in his life. He slapped a wanted poster onto the bar. A childlike sketch of an Apache girl stared back. $200, Burke said, loud enough for the whole room to hear. For anyone who brings me the girl alive. 100 if she's dead. And another 100 if you kill the black rider who took her. A low whistle rippled across the saloon. Men who had been half asleep sat up straighter. Others exchanged looks. $200 was half a ranch. Enough to buy new land, new guns, new life. Just like Burke intended. A lanky cowpoke near the wall spat tobacco and asked, What's she to you anyway? Burke's jaw twitched. A loose end. No one asked more. Within minutes, half the saloon emptied, men scrambling for horses, guns, and lanterns. Burke leaned against the bar, satisfied. He didn't need to chase prey himself. He had wolves for that. But someone else had heard too. At the far end of town, Sheriff Tom Weller burst out the back door of the station, boots pounding the dirt as he made straight for his tired old horse. He'd always known Burke was trouble. He just never expected trouble this fast. Damn it, Elijah, he muttered as he swung into the saddle. You better be long gone. He wasn't. Sheriff Weller found Elijah just outside Miri's homestead, tightening the saddle straps on Dust Devil, while Aiyana leaned weakly against the porch rail. "You got maybe 20 minutes," the sheriff warned, breathless. "Burke's put a bounty on the girl. Whole damn saloon's after her." Aiyana stiffened, instinctively grabbing Elijah's coat. Elijah cursed softly. "Thought he'd wait till morning." Weller shook his head. "He's got orders from up high. Some colonel wants every Apache witness dead. Burke's just doing what he's always done, killing folks for money and calling it justice." Elijah clenched his jaw. Memories he'd spent years burying cracked open. His brother's last breath, the injustice that stole every chance they ever had. "Then we leave now," Elijah said. Aiyana looked up at him, terrified. "You should run alone. They'll kill you if you keep me." "I ain't running alone," he said without hesitation. "Ever." Miri stepped out, arms crossed, face stern. "He's right. That bastard Burke won't stop till he's bled every inch of this land. If Elijah leaves you, they'll hunt him anyway for helping you." Aiyana turned to Elijah, voice trembling. "Why? Why risk your life?" He met her eyes, and his voice softened. "'Cause someone should have saved you sooner, and I ain't letting him take one more thing from you." Her breath caught, not just from fear, but from something else. Something she didn't know how to name yet. Weller pushed his hat back. "You head north. Take the canyon trail. Narrow enough they won't ride it fast. And Elijah..." He hesitated, looking guilty. "There's something else you need to know." Elijah studied him. "Say it." "Burke ain't hunting you blind," Weller said. "He's got orders to wipe out any witness, including me. He'll kill this whole town if he thinks we helped you." The weight of those words hit hard. Aiyana whispered, "He's a monster." Elijah's hands tightened on the reins. "Then I'll drag him into hell myself if I have to." Weller looked pained. "I hate this, but you can't stay. Not one more minute." A distant roar of hooves echoed from town. They were coming. Miri shoved a pouch of food into Elijah's hands. "Don't argue, and don't you die, boy. I buried enough fools I cared about." Elijah's throat tightened. "Yes, ma'am." He lifted Aiyana gently into Dust Devil's saddle. She winced, but gripped the horn with what little strength she had left. Elijah swung up behind her, wrapping one arm around her waist to hold her steady. Her breath trembled at the contact, and she whispered, "I'm scared." "I know," he said, lowering his forehead to her temple. "But I'm right here." The pounding hooves grew louder. Elijah turned to Weller. "You didn't see us?" Weller nodded once. "You never came this way." Elijah kicked Dust Devil hard. The horse surged forward. The night split open, and behind them, like a wave ready to swallow everything it touched, Burke's hired men thundered out of town with fire in their eyes. Elijah didn't look back. He didn't need to. The darkness was coming for them. But he'd already decided Aiyana wasn't dying tonight. Dust Devil flew across the open stretch like he had fire on his heels. Elijah kept one arm locked tight around Aiyana's waist, steadying her as the horse tore through sagebrush and dry grass. The night air whipped her hair across his chin, stinging him in sharp little lashes, but he didn't mind. It meant she was still alive, still breathing, and he intended to keep it that way. Aiyana's fingers twitched against his coat, searching for something to hold on to. Elijah took her hand, guiding it to the saddle horn. "There," he murmured. "Hold tight. I got the rest." Behind them came shouts, curses, and the distant crack of a pistol cutting through the wind. Aiyana flinched. Elijah felt it immediately. "Don't look back," he said softly. "Ain't nothing behind us worth seeing." She turned her face just enough to whisper, "I heard them say your name. They know who you are." "Yeah," he breathed, jaw tight. "Seems I made myself real popular tonight." "You didn't have to do this," she said weakly. "You could have left me." Elijah leaned closer, voice rough. "Don't say that. I ain't leaving nobody for Burke Lancaster. Not you. Not anyone." Her eyes softened, though pain sharpened their edges. She lowered her head, resting it against his chest. It wasn't a choice, more like surrender. Her strength was fading fast. "You're shaken," Elijah whispered, pulling her even closer. "Tell me where it hurts." Aiyana pressed a hand to her ribs, breath hitching. "It burns. Every time the horse moves." "I know, sweetheart," he murmured. "We'll stop soon. I just gotta get us far enough away first." This close, Elijah could feel her heartbeat, a frantic, fragile flutter that made his own tighten painfully. He'd ridden with wounded men, carried them through battlefields, watched them die in his arms. He hated how familiar the fear felt. Dust Devil slowed as they entered a narrow canyon, the tall stone walls muffling the sound of their pursuers. Elijah loosened his hold on the reins, letting the stallion pick a careful path through the shadows. Aiyana tried to shift, but the motion drew a sharp cry from her lips. "Easy," Elijah whispered, immediately steadying her. "Talk to me. Tell me what you need." She swallowed hard. "Water, maybe." He pulled a small flask from his saddlebag and held it to her lips. Aiyana drank shakily, then closed her eyes. "Elijah," she said quietly, "my people, they believed every soul was watched by the Creator, that a hawk would guide the lost back home." She drew a trembling breath. "Today, I thought maybe I'd fly to them." Elijah felt something crack deep inside him. He wrapped his free arm fully around her, sweeping her closer so she wouldn't fall. "You ain't flying anywhere," he said. "Not tonight. Not while I'm breathing." Aiyana opened her eyes to look at him. Really look at him, the moonlight. Caught his face, the strong lines of his jaw, the dust streaking his cheek, the fierce determination carved into his expression. "Why do you care?" she whispered. "You don't know me." "I know enough," he said. "I know someone hurt you. I know you lost more than anyone should. And I know Burke's a devil who don't deserve your fear." Her lips parted, the wind catching the tiny sound she made. Something warm flickered across her expression, something like trust, or the first soft beginning of it. I don't want to bring trouble on you, she murmured. You ain't trouble, he said. You're the reason I'm riding like hell tonight. But that ain't trouble. She blinked, startled. Elijah gave her a faint, crooked smile. And if anyone calls saving a life trouble, then they can come say it to my face. A gunshot cracked from behind the canyon walls, ricocheting off stone. Elijah hissed a curse. They're catching up. Aiyana tensed, gripping his coat. Elijah, I know, he said, touching her shoulder briefly. Hold on. Dust Devil gathered himself, hooves grinding against gravel, as Elijah urged him forward again. The canyon narrowed, then opened into a high ridge with a thin trail hugging the cliffside. Aiyana gasped when she saw the drop. We'll fall. Not if you trust him, Elijah said, patting the stallion's neck. Dust Devil's sure-footed, better than any man back there. The horse turned sideways along the narrow shelf, inches from the drop. Aiyana's body tightened in fear. Elijah wrapped his arm around her, anchoring her against him. It's all right, he soothed. Lean into me. I won't let you go. She obeyed, pressing against his chest, hiding her face as the wind whipped wildly around them. When they reached safer ground, Elijah breathed deeply. We're almost to a place we can rest, he said. Just hold on a little longer. Aiyana's voice was a whisper against his coat. I'm trying. I know, he answered, tightening his grip around her trembling frame. And you're doing just fine. For the first time since her world burned, Aiyana let her eyes close. Not in surrender, but because she finally trusted someone enough to keep them open for her. By the time Elijah found a narrow hollow carved into the mountainside, Aiyana was barely conscious. Her head leaned heavily against his shoulder, breaths coming shallow and uneven. Elijah slowed Dust Devil to a careful trot, scanning the shadows for movement. This'll do, he murmured. Ain't much, but it'll give us a minute. He swung off the horse and caught Aiyana in his arms before she could slip. She gasped softly, pain rippling through her as he lowered her onto a flat stretch of stone tucked beneath an overhang. The night had turned cold, not gently, but sharply, the kind of cold that cut straight to bone. Elijah shrugged out of his coat and draped it around her shoulders. Aiyana's fingers brushed the fabric, her voice nothing but a frayed whisper. You'll freeze. I've frozen before, Elijah said. Ain't nothing new. He knelt in front of her, his hands steady even though his heartbeat wasn't. He eased the cloth at her ribs aside. The wound was angry, swollen, bleeding again from the rough ride. Aiyana flinched. Don't, she breathed. I'm sorry, he murmured. I gotta clean it. If I don't, you'll get fever, and you're already too weak. She shut her eyes tightly, jaw set. Elijah soaked a strip of cloth from his canteen and pressed it gently to her wound. Her hand shot out and gripped his forearm, knuckles white. Hey, he whispered. Look at me. She forced her eyes open. There you go, breathe with me. Slow. For a moment, their breaths mingled in the cold air, hers shaking, his steady, grounding her like a tether in a storm. I know it hurts, he said softly, but you're doing real good. When he finished cleaning the wound, he reached for needle and thread. The dim firelight reflected off the metal, making Aiyana stiffen. You don't have to. I do, he interrupted gently. It's deep, needs stitching. She swallowed, pressing her lips together. Elijah nodded toward his shoulder. You can hold on if you need to. He didn't expect her to. She was proud, too proud to show weakness in front of a stranger. But as he pierced the skin with the first stitch, a small cry escaped her, and her hand flew to his shoulder, gripping hard. That's it, he murmured, voice calm despite the tight ache in his chest. You hold on. Her forehead touched his collarbone. Her breath shook against his throat. Elijah's heart thudded painfully, not from fear, but from something far more dangerous. He cared. Too much. Too fast. He finished the stitching quickly, hands trembling only once. When he tied the final knot, Aiyana exhaled shakily, loosening her hold. You did good, Elijah whispered. Real good. She blinked up at him, exhaustion softening her usually sharp gaze. Why are you so kind to me? Elijah sat back on his heels, searching her eyes. 'Cause I ain't blind. You've been through hell, and you're still fighting. Folks like you deserve someone in their corner. Her lips parted as if to say something, but the words slipped away before reaching her tongue. Elijah, she whispered, voice fragile. Back there, when you held me, I heard your heart. It was so strong. He swallowed, caught off guard by the softness of her tone. That just means I'm still alive. And you want me to stay alive too, she said, a small, trembling realization in her voice. I do, he answered simply. More than I should. The air shifted, heavy, intimate, warm despite the cold night. Aiyana's eyes lingered on his face for a long, unguarded heartbeat. Then, a faint crunch echoed from the ridge above them. Elijah's body tensed instantly. His hand moved to his gun. Aiyana tried to sit up, wincing. Stay down, he whispered. Someone's out there. He pressed himself against the rock wall, listening. Crack, a rolling pebble, a metallic click. Damn, Elijah hissed. They found us. Aiyana's breath caught. Burke's men? Or worse. He grabbed her hand and pulled her to a shadowed corner. Dust Devil stomped nervously at the mouth of the hollow. Then, a bullet slammed into the rock above Elijah's head, sending shards raining down. Aiyana gasped, covering her head. Elijah grabbed her, shielding her with his own body. Stay behind me, he whispered. I ain't losing you. Another bullet whined past. Elijah fired once, clean, controlled. A shout echoed from the ridge. They're trying to flush us out, he muttered. We gotta move. Aiyana's voice shook. I can run. No, Elijah said, looking directly into her eyes. You can lean on me, that's enough. She nodded, trusting him without hesitation this time. Elijah slung her arm over his shoulder, pulled her close, and together they slipped deeper into the mountain shadows. just as more gunfire exploded behind them, lighting the night like silver lightning. But Elijah didn't let go, not even for a second. The trail beneath the mountain narrowed into a rough path scattered with loose stones and twisted roots. Elijah kept one arm firm around Aiyana's waist as he guided her forward, careful but fast. Dust Devil followed close behind, ears pinned back, uneasy. "You holding up?" Elijah whispered. Aiyana nodded, though her breath trembled with every step. "I'm trying." "I know," he murmured. "Just stay with me." Then it happened. A sharp metallic whistle split the air. Before Elijah could react, something dropped from above, a weighted net of steel cords snapping open like a spider's web. It slammed down on him, dragging him to his knees. Aiyana cried out, stumbling toward him. "Elijah!" "Stay back," he barked, fighting the net as it tightened around his shoulders and arms. "It's a trap." 3 men emerged from the rocks, boots crunching on gravel, rifles raised. Their faces were half-shadowed, but their grins were unmistakable. Hunters who believed they'd already won. "That's the one," the tallest said. "Burke'll pay double for him. Maybe triple if the girl's still breathing." Aiyana froze, terror gripping her chest. She looked at Elijah, pinned and struggling beneath the net, and something rose inside her. Fear, yes, but stronger than that. Fury. She wasn't losing him. Not after everything. One of the men reached for her. "Come on, sweetheart. Don't make this harder." Aiyana snatched a rock from the ground and hurled it at his face with every ounce of strength she had left. The man shouted, clutching his eye. Elijah exploded into motion. Using the split second of distraction, he twisted violently, rolling onto his back. His boot lashed out, catching the second man's knee. The man collapsed with a howl, but the third man leveled his rifle. Aiyana gasped. "Elijah!" The gun fired, but the bullet only grazed her cheek, drawing a thin line of blood. That was all Elijah needed. Something primal snapped inside him. A sound tore from his throat, a low, furious growl he didn't know he was capable of. He lunged, ripping the net's corner free from a splintered root. The steel cords loosened just enough for him to wrench an arm out. He slammed his fist into the third man's gut, then tore the rifle free and cracked it across the man's jaw. The clearing fell silent except for Elijah's ragged breaths. Aiyana stumbled toward him. "You're bleeding." "Not as bad as you," Elijah said, voice rough as he cupped her cheek, thumb brushing the thin line of blood. "They almost—" His voice failed for a moment. "I ain't letting that happen. Ever." Her breath stuttered, not from fear, but from the intensity burning in his eyes, raw, protective, aching. But the victory didn't last. The first man, the one she'd hit, groaned and rolled over. Elijah pressed his boot to the man's chest, gun trained on him. "Talk," Elijah snarled. "How'd you find us?" Man coughed. We saw tracks." "Don't lie to me." The man hesitated. Eyes darted. Fear crept up his throat. "Burke knows the route you take. Someone told him where you'd run." The words hit Elijah like a fist. "Who?" he demanded. But the man only shook his head, lips sealing tight. Whether from fear or loyalty, Or fear of Burke's lack of loyalty, Elijah couldn't tell. He lowered the barrel. Fine. He slammed the man's head against the rock. The man went limp. Aiyana flinched at the violence. But then she realized Elijah's hands were trembling. Elijah, she whispered softly. He closed his eyes, breathing hard. Somebody ratted us out. Somebody who knows me. Someone who knew where I'd run with you. Aiyana stepped closer, laying her hand on his wrist. We'll figure it out, but not here. Her touch steadied him more than she could know. He inhaled slowly, then nodded. You're right. He scooped up what supplies he could salvage, slung his rifle, and turned to her. Get on, Dust Devil, he said gently. You're too weak to walk. Aiyana hesitated only a moment before letting him lift her into the saddle. She winced as her wound pulled, and Elijah's face tightened with worry. I'm okay, she whispered. No, you ain't, he murmured. But you will be. He swung up behind her, wrapping one arm around her waist again, holding her steady. Aiyana leaned back just slightly, letting herself rest against him. Elijah, she murmured. Yeah? You came back for me, even when they trapped you. He didn't answer right away. When he did, his voice was low, almost breaking. I'll always come back for you. Dust Devil moved forward, carrying them into the deep dark of the mountain pass. Behind them, the bodies lay still. Ahead of them, danger waited. But between them, something deeper than fear was growing. Something Elijah wasn't ready to name, and something Aiyana wasn't ready to lose. Elijah rode hard until the mountain shadows softened into a wide stretch of land littered with charred tree stumps and old wagon ruts. The moon was sinking. Aiyana leaned weakly against his chest, half conscious, but awake enough to know he was pushing himself and the horse far beyond safe limits. Elijah, she whispered, you need to rest. He shook his head. Ain't stoppin' till we reach my hideout. Got supplies there. Food. Water. Bandages. You'll be all right soon as we get there. His voice was steady, but there was something underneath it. Urgency. Fear. A crack he was trying hard to hide. Aiyana lifted her head slightly, trying to convince him. You're exhausted. Not enough to drop you, he replied. Her chest warmed, even through the pain. No one had ever spoken about her life like it weighed more than their own. A narrow canyon opened before them, leading to a small basin surrounded by low cliffs. Elijah slowed Dust Devil and pointed. There, he said softly. My place. You'll be safe. Aiyana followed his gaze and froze. The small canvas tent was gone. The lean-to shelter collapsed. Black smoke curled from still smoldering wood. The fire pit had been kicked apart. Someone had come before them. Elijah's whole body stiffened. He slid off the horse so fast, Aiyana reached out instinctively as if afraid he might fall. He didn't. His boots hit the ground with fury. No, no, no. Elijah walked forward, voice hollow. This ain't right. Aiyana whispered. What happened? He didn't answer. He moved like a man in a bad dream, lifting charred boards, kicking aside burnt cloth, searching for anything that hadn't been destroyed. It was all ash. His breath shook, just once, just enough for Aiyana to hear. She slid off Dust Devil slowly, wincing as her wound pulled, but she made herself stand beside him. Elijah, talk to me. He stared at the blackened wreckage, eyes dark as storm clouds. Someone burned it, he said quietly. And they did it recently. Aiyana ran a trembling hand along the burned wood. Burke? No, Elijah said, jaw clenching. Burke ain't smart enough to track me here, and he don't know this place. His gaze moved across the ash. He crouched and lifted a boot print half preserved in the soot. Broad heel, deep step, military-issue sole. Aiyana saw the moment the recognition hit him. Elijah? She whispered. He didn't look up. That's Sheriff Weller's boot. Aiyana sucked in a breath. But he tried to warn you. Elijah let out a bitter laugh. He warned me so he could cover his tracks. Damn fool played both sides. The betrayal cut deep. She saw it in the way Elijah's shoulders slumped, in the way his hand trembled when he touched the ruined supplies. He had so few people he trusted in this world, and now one of them had burned him out. Elijah, Aiyana whispered, stepping close. I'm sorry. Didn't move. The firelight reflected in his eyes, sharpening the pain there, twisting it with something darker, something dangerous. He burned everything I had left, Elijah murmured. Everything that was mine. Aiyana reached for his hand. He flinched, just a little, then let her fingers close around his. They want you to break, she said softly. That's why they do this. He looked at her then, really looked at her. Eyes locked, chests close enough she could feel the heat of his breath. And what if I do? He asked, voice low, raw. What if I break and do something I can't take back? Aiyana stepped closer, her injured body trembling, but her voice steady. Then you'll lose yourself, and that's what they want. Don't give them that. He swallowed hard, jaw flexing. Aiyana lifted his hand and pressed it gently to her cheek. You saved me from being alone. Let me return it. Don't let this turn you into the man you hate. Elijah's eyes closed, the tension in him shuddering like a dam cracking. When he opened them again, some of the rage had drained, still burning, but contained. You keep talking to me like that, he said softly, and I won't be able to let you go. Aiyana breathed shakily. Maybe. I don't want you to. Their moment shattered at the sound of a horse approaching. Hoofbeats, slow, heavy, familiar. Elijah grabbed Aiyana's arm and pulled her gently behind him, gun raised. A silhouette rode in from the canyon's edge. Sheriff Tom Weller, alive, but beaten, bleeding, barely staying on his horse. Aiyana whispered, Elijah. But Elijah's finger tightened on the trigger. Don't, she pleaded softly. Not like this. Elijah didn't lower the gun. Not yet. The night held its breath. Sheriff Tom Weller slid from his saddle like a man who'd finally run out of luck. He hit the ground hard, one knee buckling beneath him. Elijah didn't move, didn't blink, gun trained straight at the lawman's head. Aiyana clutched Elijah's arm, whispering urgently, "Please, think." But Elijah's voice came out low, dangerous. "He burned my camp. He tried to flush us out. He damn near killed us." Weller coughed and pushed himself upright, raising both hands slowly. Blood trickled down his temple, soaking the collar of his shirt. "Elijah," he rasped, "you got every right to hate me. Hell, you got every right to shoot me. But let me say my piece before you do." Elijah stepped forward. "You got 10 seconds. Aiyana swallowed hard. She could feel Elijah shaking, not from fear, but rage he couldn't contain. Weller sighed, closing his eyes briefly. "It wasn't my choice. Burke had my daughter. Took her last night. Told me if I didn't burn your supply camp and lead him to you, I'd never see her again." Elijah's jaw clenched. "So you chose him over me?" "I didn't choose anybody," Weller whispered. "I was trapped." Aiyana stepped slightly in front of Elijah, voice soft but firm. "He's telling the truth. Look at him." Weller's voice cracked. "He sent word this morning. Said he'd kill her at sundown if I didn't bring him your heads. I came to tell you run while you still can. I ain't got much time left." Elijah's anger flickered, not extinguished, but shaken. Weller knelt, head bowed. "Go on, Elijah. Do it. Might as well end me quick. Burke'll do worse if he finds me empty-handed." Aiyana whispered, horrified. "He's asking you to kill him." Elijah's hand trembled on the trigger. "Maybe that's what he deserves." "No," Aiyana breathed. She placed her hand over his. "That's not who you are." Elijah looked at her, really looked, and something struggled inside him. He exhaled slowly. "Damn it," he muttered, lowering the gun just an inch. It was the inch that saved their lives. A sharp crack split the night. Aiyana screamed as the bullet tore into her shoulder, spinning her backward into Elijah's arms. Elijah caught her before she hit the ground, eyes widening in horror. "Aiyana, no, 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 stay with me," she gasped, clutching at his coat, eyes clouding with pain. "Elijah." Her voice faded into a thin, shaking breath. Elijah whipped his head toward the ridge. Burke Lancaster stood on the rocks above them, rifle still smoking, eyes gleaming with cold triumph. "You want her alive, Carter?" Burke called. "Bring her to me, and maybe I'll let you walk away." Elijah set Aiyana gently on the ground, rage shaping every muscle in his body. "I'm gonna kill you," he growled. Burke laughed. "You can try." Another bullet struck the dirt beside Elijah's boots, sending dust into his face. Weller lunged, forward, grabbing Elijah's sleeve. "Run!" the sheriff shouted. "He's got 10 more men up there." Elijah hauled Aiyana into his arms, ignoring the blood soaking his shirt. Her head fell against his chest, her breath coming shallow, uneven. "Stay with me," he begged. "Aiyana, look at me. Look at me, sweetheart." Her eyelids fluttered, but she couldn't hold on. Elijah's voice broke. "Don't you dare leave me." Burke fired again. Stones shattered above Elijah's head. Weller shouted, "The river! Down the ravine! It'll take you out of his sight!" Elijah didn't think, didn't plan. He just ran. Dust Devil galloped beside him as Elijah sprinted down the rocky slope with Aiyana in his arms. Gunfire rained down, the world exploding in flashes of light and stone. Aiyana whimpered, her fingers weakly grasping Elijah's shirt. "Hold on," he whispered, breath ragged. "I've got you. I swear I've got you." The roar of rushing water grew louder, fast, violent, unforgiving. "You ain't jumping in there!" Weller yelled behind them. Elijah didn't slow. "Ain't got a choice." Burke's men appeared on the ridge above, rifles raised. Aiyana opened her eyes for a single second. "Elijah, don't die." He pressed his forehead to hers. "Not today." Then he leapt. The icy river swallowed them whole. The current tore them from the shore. Aiyana slipped beneath the surface, but Elijah tightened his hold, pulling her against him as the water dragged them downstream. The gunfire faded behind them. The rocks blurred. The world became nothing but water and fear and the desperate need to keep her alive. Elijah broke the surface, gasping, pulling Aiyana into his arms again. "Stay awake!" he yelled over the roar. "Stay with me, please!" She didn't answer. The river carried them into the darkness. The river finally spat Elijah and Aiyana out into a narrow ravine, jagged rocks towering on both sides like broken teeth. Elijah coughed hard, dragging them both to the gravel bank. Aiyana lay limp in his arms, her skin pale, her wounded shoulder bleeding through the soaked bandages. "Aiyana, hey." Elijah cupped her cheek, panic rising. "Come on, girl. Don't do this." Her eyelids fluttered barely. "Elijah, hurts." "I know. I know it does." His voice cracked. "But stay with me. I can't lose you now." He tore open his pack, hands shaking, pulling out the last strip of cloth he had left. He pressed it over the wound, but the blood kept seeping through, slow and steady like sand slipping from an hourglass. Not enough time, not enough strength, not enough luck left in this cursed place. Above them, a single gunshot echoed across the cliffs. Elijah's head snapped up. Burke Lancaster stood on a rocky ledge, silhouetted by the rising moon, rifle slung casually over his shoulder. 10 of his riders fanned out behind him, blocking every exit. "Well, well," Burke called down. "The mighty Elijah Carter, jumping in rivers, running through mountains, holding that little Indian girl like she's something worth saving." Elijah rose slowly, placing himself between Aiyana and the guns pointed their way. "She's worth more than you'll ever be." Burke smirked. "That's so funny, 'cause from where I'm standing, she looks about done." Aiyana whispered weakly, Don't fight him." But Elijah heard nothing except the roar in his own chest. A rage older than his grief, hotter than the desert, and aimed solely at the man who took everything from both of them. He stepped forward. "You want me? Here I am. Let her go." Burke laughed. "Son, you ain't in any position to bargain." He nodded, and two of his men climbed down the rocks, rifles ready. Elijah bent, brushed a hand over Aiyana's cheek. "Close your eyes." "Elijah, don't," she tried, voice breaking. He kissed her forehead. "I ain't dying. Not before I tear him off that damn ledge." Then he stood, cracking his knuckles, and stepped into the clearing. Burke descended the rocks with a smug elegance, rolling his shoulders like a man walking toward a bar fight he knew he'd already won. "No guns," Elijah called. "You want me so bad? Then fight me like a man." Burke's grin widened. "I was hoping you'd say that." He tossed his rifle aside. Elijah dropped his too. They circled each other in the dust, moonlight carving harsh lines across their faces. Aiyana watched through blurred vision, breath trembling. She tried to push herself up, but could barely lift her head. "Elijah," she whispered, "don't die." Her voice hit him harder than any bullet. Elijah charged first. They collided like thunder, Elijah's fists slamming into Burke's jaw, Burke countering with a brutal knee to Elijah's ribs. Someone shouted above them. The riders leaned forward, hungry for blood. Burke swung a heavy punch that caught Elijah across the cheek, splitting the skin. Elijah staggered, spitting blood, but he didn't fall. "That all you got?" Elijah growled. Burke roared and tackled him to the ground. They rolled in the dust, fists flying, bones cracking, blood staining the rocks. Burke landed on top and slammed Elijah's head against the ground. Aiyana screamed his name, trying to crawl toward them. Burke reached into his boot and pulled a hidden knife. Elijah's eyes widened. Burke sneered. "You should have stayed out of this, boy." The blade arced downward. A flash of light cut through the air. Aiyana, barely conscious, held a small piece of metal, a broken mirror shard she'd carried from her mother's medicine pouch. She angled it toward the moon, sending a sharp beam of light into Burke's eyes. He flinched, blinded for a split second. It was enough. Elijah twisted hard, knocking Burke off him. The knife skidded across the rocks. Elijah grabbed it, his breath ragged, and drove his knee into Burke's ribs, pinning him to the ground. Burke snarled, thrashing wildly. "You think you won? You ain't." Elijah pressed the blade to Burke's throat. "I didn't want to kill nobody," Elijah said, voice shaking with fury. "But I will. You hurt her. You killed her people. You burned everything I ever had." Burke bared his teeth in a cold, cruel smile. "Do it then. Prove me right about you." Elijah's hand trembled. Aiyana watched him with wide, terrified eyes. "Elijah, don't let him turn you into him," she whispered. Her voice cracked, the last thing tethering him to mercy. Burke lunged. Elijah reacted on instinct. The blade plunged deep. Burke gasped, eyes going wide, blood spilling over Elijah's hand. Elijah stumbled back, chest heaving, staring at what he'd done. Aiyana let out a soft, broken cry, but not of fear, of relief. Elijah threw the knife aside, breath shaking violently as Burke's body went still. The riders above stared in shock. Then Elijah turned, dropping to his knees beside Aiyana. "I'm here. I'm right here." Her eyes fluttered. "You saved me." He scooped her into his arms, desperate. "No, you saved me too." But her pulse was weakening. Fast. Too fast. Elijah looked toward the horizon, fear slamming into him harder than any fist. "I gotta get you help," he whispered. "Right now." He lifted her gently, holding her against his chest as if the sheer force of his will could keep her alive. Dust Devil whinnied nearby, ready. Elijah climbed into the saddle with Aiyana in his arms. "Hold on for me, sweetheart. Just a little longer." Then he kicked the stallion into a dead sprint, toward the nearest military outpost, toward danger, toward hope, toward the only chance she had left. Dust Devil thundered across the barren flats, pushing harder than any horse should. Elijah held Aiyana tight against his chest, feeling her pulse flutter weakly like the wings of a dying bird. Every jolt of the gallop made her whimper, her breath catching in shallow, broken gasps. "Stay with me," Elijah begged, voice cracking. "Just look at me, Aiyana. Keep looking." Her eyelids fluttered. "Elijah, I'm so tired." "No," he whispered fiercely, tightening his grip. "Don't close your eyes. Not yet. Don't you go anywhere without me." He could feel how cold she'd become. Too cold. Her skin damp with fever sweat, her body growing limp. But the military outpost was just ahead, a cluster of lanterns glowing faintly in the dark. Elijah kicked Dust Devil harder. "Come on," he roared. "Get us there, boy!" The horse responded, stretching into one last desperate sprint. By the time they skidded to a halt in front of the gate, Elijah was half out of the saddle already. Two soldiers rushed forward, rifles raised. "Hold it right there," one barked. "Drop your weapon and state your—" "Elijah Carter," he snapped. "And she's dying. Get a doctor, now!" The soldiers hesitated. One cocked his rifle further. "We don't treat hostiles. Apache aren't allowed inside." "She's a girl," Elijah thundered. "A girl who's bleeding out. If you don't move, I swear I'll—" His voice cracked, not from anger, but from terror. Aiyana stirred weakly. "Elijah, please." The sound of her pain broke something inside him. He turned back to the soldiers, and for the first time, Elijah Carter dropped to his knees. He laid Aiyana carefully on the ground, then raised both hands in surrender. "Please," he whispered, "I'm begging you, help her. Do whatever you want with me after. But help her first. Don't let her die." The soldiers exchanged uneasy glances. Then a younger man pushed through the gate, barely more than 20, wearing a medic's apron stained with ink and herbs rather than blood. "What's going on?" he asked. Elijah pointed at Aiyana, voice shaking. "She's been shot. Lost too much blood. Please, she needs you." The medic knelt instantly, ignoring the protest from the older soldiers. He checked her pulse, pressed a hand to her forehead, then looked sharply up at the men blocking the gate. "She's burning up. If we wait, she'll die." One soldier growled, "The colonel will have your hide for this." "And he can take it," the medic snapped. "Open the damn gate." Reluctantly, the soldiers stepped aside. Elijah scooped Aiyana back into his arms, carrying her through the outpost as lanterns flickered awake and men peeked from tents. Some whispered, "Apache girl," with contempt. Others murmured about the bounty Burke had set. Elijah ignored them all. Inside the infirmary, a small wooden hut with peeling paint, the medic cleared a cot and gestured. "Lay her down." Carefully, Elijah lowered Aiyana onto the thin mattress. She let out a broken cry, and Elijah flinched as if the sound tore through his own flesh. The medic grabbed supplies quickly. "Tell me what happened." "Burke shot her," Elijah said, voice rough. "We fought him. She bled near the river. I stitched what I could, but I ain't a doctor." "You did good," the medic said without looking up. "You kept her alive long enough to get here." Aiyana's eyes cracked open as Elijah knelt beside her. She reached for him weakly. "You shouldn't have come here. They'll hurt you." Elijah caught her hand in both of his. "Aiyana, I'd run through hell if it meant saving you." Her lips trembled. "You broke your vow. You said you wouldn't kill again." Elijah swallowed hard. "Yeah, I did." Her eyes filled. "For me?" He leaned closer, resting his forehead gently against hers. "For you, I'd do it again." Aiyana let out a soft, broken breath, the kind that wasn't quite a sob but carried the weight of one. Behind them, the medic said urgently, "She's going into shock. I need to work." Elijah nodded and tried to stand. Aiyana's hand tightened around his. "Don't go," she whispered. He leaned in and kissed her knuckles. "I ain't going far. I just gotta let him save you." Her hand slipped from his, falling limply onto the sheets as unconsciousness pulled her under. Elijah backed away 3 steps, then sank heavily against the wall. His chest heaved. His hands shook, not from battle but from fear. Fear of losing the only person who'd looked at him like he wasn't broken. Outside, angry voices rose, soldiers arguing about protocol, the colonel shouting for order. Boots stomped toward the infirmary. Elijah didn't care. Then, the door slammed open. 2 Apache figures stepped inside. Siblings, scarred and fierce. Nalon, Taya, Aiyana's surviving kin. The young medic froze mid-step, staring wide-eyed. The soldiers outside shouted in alarm. Elijah rose slowly, heart pounding. Taya spoke first, her voice cold as mountain stone. "We bring proof," she said. "Burke Lancaster killed our people, all of them." Nalon dropped a blood-stained ledger on the table. "And we've come to take our sister home." The soldiers outside were shouting. The outpost was moments away from erupting. But Elijah didn't look at them. He looked at Aiyana, at the girl he'd carried through fire, through gunfights, through rivers, and he realized he wasn't letting her go, not to the colonel, not to fate, not even to her own tribe if they meant to pull her away from him. He stepped between the Apaches and her bed. "If you want her safe," Elijah said quietly, "you're gonna have to stand with me." For the first time, Nalon's eyes softened. "Then fight beside us, Black Cowboy," he said, "because the real battle is about to begin." The outpost had never seen a night like that. Shouting soldiers, Apache warriors at the gate, a dying girl on the cot, and a black cowboy standing between every gun pointed in her direction. But by dawn, everything changed. Colonel Hayes barged into the infirmary at first light, his coat still half-buttoned, anger fresh on his tongue, only to find Nalon's ledger on his desk. Inside it, page after page detailed payments from Burke Lancaster, bribes, orders, names of settlers and soldiers guilty of burning Apache camps. Some of those names were men stationed at that very outpost. When they were dragged out in chains, the colonel's rage turned to shame, then to resolve. "Let the girl through," he ordered. "Let them all through. They're under our protection now." It was over. Maybe not the war between cultures, maybe not hate bred over years, but this part. Burke's terror, the bounty, the hunt, was over. Elijah didn't smile. Not yet. Not until Aiyana opened her eyes. She lay still on the cot, bandaged, pale, breath shallow. The medic sat exhausted beside her, having stayed awake the entire night stitching, cleaning, pushing fever back from the edge. "She's not out of the woods," he told Elijah, "but she's fighting." Elijah sank to his knees beside her bed, head bowed. "She always fights." Nalon and Taya watched silently from the corner. They said nothing, but their presence felt like a promise. Aiyana wasn't alone anymore. Not in blood, not in spirit. When her eyes finally fluttered open, Elijah felt the air leave his lungs. She blinked slowly, confused at first, then focused on him. "Elijah?" she whispered, voice raw. He leaned closer, afraid she might slip away again. "Right here." Aiyana lifted her hand with visible effort. He caught it instantly. "You're safe," he murmured. "We're both safe now." She swallowed, voice trembling. "I thought I lost you in the river." "You won't lose me," he said softly. "Not now, not ever." Taya approached the bed, placing a hand over Aiyana's good shoulder. "Sister, we thought you were gone." Aiyana's eyes glassed with relief, but she didn't let go of Elijah's hand. "Where will you go now?" Taya asked gently. Aiyana looked at Nalon, then back at Elijah. Her voice was small, honest. "Wherever he goes." Elijah froze. He hadn't expected that. Nalon studied him with a long, unreadable expression. "You saved her life. Twice." He paused. "But she is Apache. Our people." Aiyana shook her head weakly. "My people are gone. Only you and him remain." Elijah lowered his gaze. "You ain't gotta choose me, Aiyana. You've been forced to run so long that maybe you forgot you have choices now." She squeezed his hand, surprising him with her strength. I'm choosing, right now. The medic smiled tiredly. She needs rest. Days of it. Maybe weeks. Elijah nodded, standing but keeping her hand in his. Then I'll stay here with her. But Aiyana shook her head. Not here. Not this place. Too many guns. Too many ghosts. Nalan crossed his arms. We can take you east, towards the old lands. There are safe valleys still untouched. Elijah hesitated. Aiyana's eyes softened. I want somewhere quiet, she whispered. Somewhere with water. Somewhere I can breathe again. Elijah thought for a moment, then nodded. I know a place. 2 weeks later, when Aiyana could finally walk on her own, Elijah brought her and Nalan and Taya through a narrow pass into a hidden valley shaped by time and wind. A slow-moving stream curled through soft grass. A small grove of willows whispered in the breeze. Wild berries grew thick along the bank. And there, beside the water, Elijah stopped and let out a breath he'd been holding for years. This is where I used to come with my brother, he said quietly. Only place in this whole damn territory that feels alive. Aiyana stepped forward, letting the wind brush her skin. It feels peaceful. Elijah scratched the back of his neck, suddenly shy. Figured maybe we could build something here. A shelter, a garden, a life maybe, if you wanted. Aiyana turned, eyes glowing soft like dawn light. I do want that. She reached for his hand. Elijah took it gently, like he was afraid she might vanish if he held too tight. When everything burned, she whispered, I thought I had nothing left. But then, you rode through the fire for me. Elijah shook his head. You think I saved you? He stepped closer. But Aiyana, you saved me just as much. She placed her forehead against his. Then we saved each other. He cupped her cheek with a tenderness he'd never shown another soul. You're home now, he murmured. If you want to be. She smiled, a small, trembling thing full of hope. I'm exactly where I belong. And as the wind carried the sound of the stream through the valley, peaceful, warm, alive, Elijah wrapped his arms around her, pulling her close. Their story had begun with fear, blood, and fire. But here, in this quiet valley, it became something else entirely. A beginning, a home, a place where two wounded hearts chose each other and finally belonged. As this chapter of Elijah and Aiyana's journey comes to a close, I want to thank you for sitting with their fears, their courage, and their quiet moments of hope. Stories like theirs remind us that even in the harshest places, even in the loneliest seasons of life, two wounded souls can still find their way toward safety and toward each other. Maybe that's why these tales of the Old West keep touching so many hearts. They show us that it's never too late to protect someone, never too late to be protected, and never too late to start over with a bit more kindness than the world gave us the first time. If Aiyana's strength reminded you of someone you once knew, or if Elijah's stubborn loyalty stirred something familiar in you, I hope you'll share it with us below. This community is filled with folks who have lived through storms of their own, and your reflections, your memories, might be just the words someone else needs to hear tonight. And if you enjoyed walking this dusty road with us, we'd be honored if you'd tap the like button. It helps more people discover these stories, people who might be looking for comfort, or courage, or simply a place where goodness still wins in the end. And if you'd like to join us again for the next journey, another rescue, another second chance, another flicker of healing, please consider subscribing to the channel. We post regularly, and we always try to bring you something real, something gentle, something worth your time. For those of you who've lived many decades and carry more wisdom than most of us, your presence here means the world. Your stories matter. Your voices matter. When you leave a comment, you're not just talking into the void. You're helping build a space where age is honored and experience is welcomed. So before you go, let us know where you're watching from, or share what part of tonight's tale stayed with you the most. We read every message, truly. And if you'd like to see more, stay tuned at the end of the video. We'll recommend another Western love story that just might touch your heart again. Thank you for being here with us. May your evening be peaceful, your heart be light, and may you always find shelter, even in the wildest places.